Hello, and welcome to the National Book Festival. My name is Sasha Dowdy, and I work at the Library of Congress. I'm here with Mike Curato, whose featured book at the festival this year is Flamer. If you'd like to see Mike's presentation at the festival, please log in to nationalbookfestival.com, and you'll find the presentation on the teen stage. So, welcome, Mike. It's great to have you here.
Hey, Sasha, thanks for having me today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a bit of a different environment than your last visit to the National Book Festival, but it's still great to have you and hear you. And we get to see uh, the things that you surround yourself with.
Yeah, books,
It's
24/7.
a perfect world. We are waiting for some questions to roll in, so maybe you can talk about a special experience you had last year.
Oh, well, yeah, Sasha and I were talking before we went live, and I think it's actually maybe 2 years ago, I was at my very first National Book Festival, and on Friday night, there's an opening reception welcoming all of the authors who are speaking that weekend. So I got to go to the Library of Congress, and it was beautiful. And there's a big buffet, and people are talking and chatting and meeting each other. So I was making the rounds, and then I spotted a few people surrounding somebody that was talking, and I was like, "Who is that?" And I realized that's Carla Hayden. So I just kind of, casually made my way over, like not smiling, nodding. I was like, fanboying out. And then she was mid-sentence and stopped and looked at me and said, "I love your outfit." And it was one of the happiest moments of my life.
It is an absolute highlight.
Yeah. Yes, I
Thank you
feel
so
like
much.
all my hard work, was just driving me to that moment.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's what all authors can strive for.
Yes.
And so we do have a question from Hannah S. Actually, I'm so sorry. We have a question from Katie. Do you have any other LGBTQ books that you believe need to be seen in every middle or high school library? Of course, in addition to your book.
Yes. You know, Fun Home by Alison Bechdel, I think is now a seminal classic when it comes to LGBT literature in general. It is an autobiography of her youth, and kind of her coming to terms with her sexual identity, but also talking about her father, who was closeted, and their relationship and their family dynamics. And it's a very powerful book. So that is very high on my recommendation list. This kind of happens to me when people ask me for book recommendations. I totally blank, and as if I've never read a book before. Spinning by Tilly Walden. I think that's another really important book, which is also autobiographical. I'm so glad I have, I have my books right behind me. What else? I'm thinking, and I'm blanking. But those two for sure. I also love the Witch Boys series, which is more of a middle grade kind of witchy fantasy series. I think there are 3 books, and that's by Molly Ostertag. And they're really fun, magical, of course, and it deals a lot with confronting gender norms. So that's a high recommendation for middle grade readers. So I hope that helps.
Thank you. Mindy and Carmen wanted to hear the first title again. Was it Fun Home?
Fun Home, yes. And there is a follow-up, a sequel called Are You My Mother? But definitely read fun home.
And
And of
that's
course, I have to mention that Alison Bechdel, of course, wrote and illustrated the series Dykes to Watch Out For, or is it Look Out For? Sorry if I'm getting the title wrong, but so that start. I think she started that comic strip in maybe the '90s, and um, there's a compilation book that's incredible. So check that out for sure. Though it may be more adult than youth.
the essential dikes to watch out for.
That's the one. That's the
Yep.
compilation. Yes.
Great. Thank you for clarifying that one. So, Ellen has a question about your work. How is it different illustrating a book that you also wrote versus illustrating a book that someone else wrote?
Um, I do find a difference. It's kind of liberating to be able to illustrate someone else's work. First of all, they've done half the work for you. um, but it's kind of nice to have some parameters already set in place. So I can um, also be more objective about making decisions about the book because I didn't write it. Uh, Sometimes it's harder when it's a book that you've written um, to be objective when you're illustrating. I mean, this book was certainly difficult for me to illustrate. So that's the biggest difference that I find. I kind of find it easier in a way, but of course, if it's a book that I wrote, I may already have a vision when I'm finally going into the final illustrations. Whereas if someone gives me a manuscript, I need to spend a lot of time kind of beginning to envision that world. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, so, who are some authors whose work you love to read?
I love Jean Yang's work. If we're talking about graphic novels, American Born Chinese was a huge influence on me, and one of the books that inspired me to tell this story in a way. And also his series Boxers and Saints, I think is incredible. I love how he marries real life with fantasy and religion. So I've got a bit of that going on in this title. So he's someone I love. Other graphic novels that influenced me were Stitches by David Small, another seminal classic, and I think a pivotal title in the graphic novel medium. That is autobiographical. I actually spy it out of the corner of my eye here. And this was a National Book Award finalist as well years ago. I also love Blankets by Craig Thompson. Some other must-read classics, of course, are Mouse, Persepolis. Those are really important books. Linda Barry is kind of otherworldly in her approach to the medium. I think she really stretches where you can go with bookmaking and storytelling. And she actually gave me a lot of confidence to write this book. I took a workshop that she taught at an illustration conference years ago called Icon, and her workshop was titled, I think it was Writing for Artists or Writing for Illustrators. And basically she just gave the class some really simple tools to kind of help unlock your writing process, like treating it as if you were almost illustrating with words is kind of what it felt like. So very grateful to Linda Barry. So definitely check out her work. I mean, I could just keep on I can just keep on listing titles, but Are there more questions before I?
Oh, yes, we do have plenty of questions.
Okay.
So thanks, Katie, for that question. We have a related one from Marie. You have an awesome collection of books behind you. Are they, by any chance, books that you grew up with? Are there any favorites, unforgettables, game changers?
I mean, I I usually don't spend money on a book unless I think it's really good. And I think, um, I mean, I've got both graphic novels and picture books behind me. Um, and I kind of want to be in love with the art and the story. Um, Sometimes I'll buy a book if I just, if I haven't even read it, but I'm already in love with the art, just because. But some of these are childhood books. Here's one right here. This is like the book I grew up with, and it's Tibor Gergely's Great Big Book of Bedtime Stories. So this is a Golden Books collection, which most everyone knows the Golden Books. But he was, I believe, a Hungarian immigrant, and he emigrated here, I think, in the 40s, 30s or 40s, and so all these illustrations go back to mostly I want to say 50s. But this was like my favorite book to read when I was a kid. And then, game changer books. I talked about game changing graphic novels before. But well, before I move to picture books, I should mention This One Summer by Jillian and Mariko Tamaki is like one of my ultimate favorite books of all time. I don't know what to say about it. You just have to read it. But game changing picture books, I don't know where to start. I mean, there's Olivia by Ian Falconer, which was kind of a game changer also for the picture book industry when it first came out. It was kind of revolutionary in a lot of ways for its simplicity, in style, and so that was a big inspiration, especially when I was working on my first picture books of Little Elliot. Let's see who else. I'm feeling the pressure.
Well,
um,
tell us about just one more. We have other questions too.
okay, sure. Well, right away I just see an illustrator who I know and love, is Christian Robinson. And this is just one of his books that I'm in love with, Josephine, which is, as you can see, has won multiple awards. But he has such a beautiful style that is at the same time very simple stylistically, but also very sophisticated. So much love to Christian Robinson.
Thank you so
Okay,
much.
next
Yeah,
question.
thanks for sharing. So going back to your medium of Flamer, Kenneth wants to know what makes the graphic novel medium so powerful for teens?
Well, I can tell you what made it so powerful for me was that when I was a teenager, I was kind of falling off the wagon when it came to reading. Um, I wasn't ready to let go of images with the words, right? So there's a certain age where it was expected that you aged out of illustration, that you should just be reading, bricks of type. And I did get there eventually. I love novels now, and I think sometime in high school I made that transition of like being able to really dive into a big book. But middle school, early high school, I didn't want to. And comic books kind of saved the day for me, right? Because they were exciting and the art was beautiful. So I just bought all the comic books that I could. So it saved me as a reader. So I think There's something about graphic novels that is so unique because um, it's like cinema in book form, right? Because you have not just images and text like in a picture book, but there's something about the sequential medium um, that's very engaging, and you feel very drawn into the story. Um, you're a part of that pacing that the author and illustrator have established, and um, yeah, that's what does it for me anyway. It's very easy for me to step into a character's shoes when it's in graphic novel format.
Great, thank you. And what inspired you to become a writer, perhaps after illustrating for so long?
Well, I've always written. I mean, drawing is my first love. I've always drawn, but I have also written for a really long time. Like I loved writing as a kid, um, and I mostly wrote for myself. But in college, I rediscovered my love of picture books, and so um, that really inspired me to want to write my own. Um, I was really into the contemporary illustration work that was coming out in picture books when I was in college. So that was 1999 to 2003. And when I started reading the books, I remembered how much I loved them, but also kind of um, rediscovered these classics. And as an adult, just really appreciating um, the the art form, like um, the compactness of a story in a picture book was incredible to me, and like how much feeling and emotion could be pressed into 40 pages or 32 pages. So I started, wanting to be an author as well. So, and my first book that I illustrated was a book that I wrote as well. Um, so
Great.
yeah,
Mhm. Thank you. Yeah, the picture book medium seems so simple, like anyone can do it. And then it is maybe more challenging than books for
very
adults.
hard to have that limitation. And also, I think picture books are for people of any age, really.
Mhm.
I've heard librarians use the term everyone books, which I love. Um, but you have to, it's inclusive of beginner readers, right? So having to convey all this information and feeling into a very simple text, and it has to be 32 pages or 40 pages. Rarely you get 48 pages in a picture book. So that's pretty limiting. Whereas a novel, a graphic novel, um, you can pretty much just keep writing, right? There's not that kind of limitation. So it is tricky for sure writing a picture book. So
Yeah.
it's a little liberating to just like, I just can keep writing. I keep adding stuff.
Well, you're a master of many types of skills for sure.
Oh,
Um,
thanks.
so Kitty Johnson has a question about back to Flamer. What's your elevator pitch for Flamer, and what is your response to parents, teachers, admin who don't think that this is appropriate to have that it's appropriate to have LGBTQ books available to them?
Hmm. That it is or is not appropriate.
To the people who don't think it's appropriate.
Gotcha. Well, the elevator pitch is that Flamer is YA, right? So, and we're saying 14 and up, or maybe younger with parental or adult guidance. Um, but anyway, it's a story of Aiden Navarro, who's a 14-year-old boy at scout camp. The year is 1995. It's the summer before he begins his first year of high school. And he is dealing with a lot of issues like body image, um, his questions of his religion. Um, he's dealing with friendships and bullying and how sometimes those two things can overlap. Um, and he's dealing with racism. And he is doing all that while also confronting his own sexual identity. Um, so it can get quite heavy at times. And just a trigger warning, there is suicide ideation in this book. Um, but there's a lot of levity built in. There's a lot of comic book nerd tributes in there. An occasional fart joke. It's in many ways an homage to summer camp as well, and unlikely friendships. And I really want to thank you for asking the question. Why do I think it's appropriate to have an LGBT themed book in a public library or a school classroom? Something I hear from educators sometimes is, well, we don't have any kids like that in our school. And you're wrong. You definitely do have queer children in your classroom, in your church. There are queer people anywhere. The reason that you don't see them is because you don't live in a community where people feel safe to be out and to be themselves. Part of why I made this book is because when I was 14, that's the community that I lived in. It was not safe for me to be out. I knew that I would be ostracized. I knew that I would be a social pariah. I knew that I would be physically hurt. And I, had to come to terms with who I was, and I grappled with suicide ideation as a teenager. And in this country, if you want to go to the Trevor Project, .org. They have a lot of statistics that are very valuable. And an LGBTQI youth is at a much higher risk of suicide, of self-harm, of homelessness. If that queer youth is trans, the number increases exponentially. If that queer youth is a person of color, the stats also shoot up. So I think whatever your views on queerness are, whether or not you are troubled by someone being gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, you name it, maybe that maybe you just don't agree with people being who they are in that regard. But I hope that you can agree that they're all human beings and we are all human beings, and we all deserve a space in this world. And I hope that you would agree that it's more important to empower youth, to let them know like they have the right to be here, as opposed to the alternative, which is perhaps them harming themselves. And I don't think anyone wants that. So that is my number one reason why books like mine, other books about queer youth need to be included in public libraries and classrooms, because people need to see themselves in a book on screens. They need to feel represented, to feel valuable in this world, to feel like they're worth something. So that's what you're telling those children when there's a book featuring someone like them in your library. Is you're saying, I want you to be here. So I could go on, but I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Thank you for being such an advocate for the kids who are at risk. Your book is really important for that, and your message. One of the guests of the festival is asking what is the main message you wish to get across to the readers. So would you say that's your main message, that the people, everyone's place is here, everyone's life is valuable?
Yes, absolutely. I want, as I said before, I want to empower youth to be able to make that decision to stay in this world and find find out who they are. You know, I'm glad I stayed. I'm glad that I gave myself a chance. Um, something that maybe I didn't explain to the extent that I wanted to before in answering that other question was I thought about killing myself because I thought that if I didn't, someone might do it for me. And that's the reality of the world that we live in um, for some people. So I just want people to bear that in mind, where it's this is not a book about sex. I feel like all queer themed anything it always gets relegated to something sexual um, when it's not that's not what this is
Mhm.
all about. Not entirely, of course, but
Right. Thank you. And thank you for being so honest and sharing that part of you. I think a lot of people need to hear that and see you here in front of us all.
no problem. And I think that I mean, this is just a theory, but I think most people, whether they're queer or not, have to grapple with that question at some point in their lives. So I think it's just more common than we know.
Yeah. Thank you. Um, Talking a little bit about a different aspect of Flamer, Morgan Kay is asking, can you talk about the use of color in Flamer?
Yeah. So Flamer is mostly black and white, um, which is like a black colored pencil with ink washes. And then you get these moments of um, monochromatic color. So I use a lot of reds and oranges to kind of convey emotions, and that ranges from fear to rage to love. Um, and of course, there is a theme of fire running throughout the book. Um, so any instances of fire, you'll see that in color. So yeah, I try to use it sparingly, and the times I do use it, it's to make a point about something, to draw the viewer's attention to something. So thanks for
Great.
the question.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great explanation. For those who haven't read it yet, can do a closer reading now that they know. We have a question from Ellen. Is there any author you'd love to work with?
Ooh. um, who would I love to work with? Um, gosh, I mean, I love M.T. Anderson's work. Um, I love Kate DiCamillo's work. Um, I feel like this is another question where I could just sit here and list names.
And you're
Um,
listing other authors who are at the festival this year too.
ah, I knew MT was at the festival. I didn't know that
Yep.
Kate was too, but I'm not
Hmm.
surprised, of course. um, uh, yeah, I don't know. I will draft a master list for that question. Um, Start putting it into the universe.
Great. So this is we have only enough time for one last question. So please give us a peek into your life. A question from Katie Klenko. What do you like to do when you aren't writing or illustrating?
Now or in the before times?
Both, please.
Yes. Well, of course, if you know my little Elliot series, you know I have a great penchant for sugar. So
Yeah.
I love eating. My favorite pastime, eating, sometimes cooking, most of the time eating. And of course, film is very important to me, for both story and visuals. I get a lot of inspiration from um, different films that I watch. These days, I've been doing a lot of outdoor time, many hikes in the woods, lots of socially distanced backyard hangouts with friends. Um, but hopefully, when all this is over, I can resume my world travels. I love traveling across the country, across the world. I was fortunate enough to squeeze in a trip to Thailand last fall before the pandemic hit. Um, yeah, so those are my big passions. Also, karaoke. I miss. I have done some virtual karaoke nights, which has been kind of awesome.
Wow.
So there's a local bar that has organized that. Um, so yeah, shout out to the Majestic in Northampton, Mass. It's the only queer bar in Western Massachusetts, and they have a lot of virtual events. So check out their page. Um,
Great.
yeah,
You're making the best of this situation right now. That's
that's
amazing.
really all we can do.
Yeah,
um,
that's true.
yeah.
Well, that's all the time we have for today, unfortunately. Thank you
Okay.
so much, Mike, for sharing your time with us so generously today.
Thank you.
Yeah, this has been very inspirational, and I think everyone now has a very long list of to read and things to
Mhm.
explore and new ways to look at your work. So this has been a Q&A with Mike Curato, whose latest book is Flamer. You can find his presentation on the teen stage at the National Book Festival, nationalbookfestival.com. Thank you so much for the audience here today. Thank you for your wonderful questions. I hope all of you will take the time to explore our many programs and enjoy the remainder of the National Book Festival.